guys, and they run a website called Get Out of Debt Free. And you can find them there and find all their information on how the banking elites are enslaving people, basically, and created this monetary system to control the masses. Tonight's show, we'll be talking about debt, credit cards, mortgage, and how these bankers make you pay something that doesn't even exist. And if you missed the show tonight, then there's always a podcast on my YouTube channel, commonly known as Dom. And I may as well introduce the guys. John and Ceylon, are you there?
I'm here, Dom. Good evening. How you doing?
Brilliant. Right, now we might as well get straight into it about debt, because this is, most of the people out there have either had debt issues or no family that have had debt issues, and how these bankers have done it to people and take people's homes, cars, and even children and your own freedom and put you in a prison cell. So it says on your website that you highlight the fraudulent nature of the global banking system, and you offer solutions to those who are affected by the banking scam. So do you want to get into it to how bankers have done this and what the solutions are?
Okay. Well, shall I start off, Mark? And because if I do the sort of general stuff about the overall system, and then I think Salon can then go into the sort of more nitty gritty about the actual solutions. Are you okay with that, Salon?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the best place to start is the start of how money is created, I suppose.
Well, yeah. Well, it's created in the same way that we, they get on a computer keyboard and go tap, 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 and then create money. The idea that you go for a loan is just preposterous. I mean, it's crazy. What's happening? There's quite a few things happening. They can't actually create money without your signature. This is the main thing. And you think that when you're going for a loan, you're actually borrowing some sort of money. And they actually give you some sort of idea that you're borrowing money, which is the most ridiculous thing, isn't it? Because how can you possibly borrow money? Because it's not other people's money you're actually borrowing. What they're doing, they're creating it with your signature. Okay? You okay with that so far?
Yeah, I'm with it, as you know, John.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I think this information is valuable for anyone to learn, because it's so basic and simple. So carry on.
It is. Well, I try and explain it really simply so that a child can understand it. And the whole thing is that when you sign what you think is a loan application, that's absolutely rubbish, because it's not a loan application. It actually turns into a promissory note. So what it is, you're creating the money with your signature, and that promissory note is then, it's actually quite valuable. It's valuable enough for them to actually lend money against it. So, what you think is a loan application becomes a promissory note. Now, two things happen with that. One thing is that because it's worth money, they actually securitize it, which means they bundle it up and sell them. So they're already getting paid for it. And then, obviously, they want your promissory note back. Well, that promissory note created the money. So basically, you've created the money already. But what it is, they actually want that. I say money, cash effectively. It's all just IOUs. But the trouble is, they want that back, and they want you to go to work and actually create more of these go and collect more of these promissory notes to actually pay this promissory note back. Well, that can never happen, because there's never enough cash to actually pay off all the debts. And if we did pay off all the debts, there wouldn't be any money at all. So it is the craziest system.
So this would be the same for credit cards, mortgages, and loans. You go to the bank, you either ask them for a card or a loan or whatever. You have an agreement where you put a signature down on a piece of paper, and then they go and create the money off of this signature. So when they ask you to repay it, they're acting fraudulently because they do know how this banking scam works, and you don't have to pay it at all, do you?
Well, of course not. Of course not, because you created that in the first place. That is the thing. They say that they loaned you money. I mean, I'm actually going to get onto the advertising standards because they still advertise loans, and that simply is not true. It's absolutely crazy.
Are you on about trading standards?
Yeah, well, I think it'd make a good little video. One of us is going to have to do it sometime. Yeah, perhaps we both could. But the thing is, you say, well, what they mean, they're actually, saying, well, we're offering you a loan. Well, they can't offer us a loan because it's not like they've got money in the bank. They haven't. This is the biggest con going. And the idea that they pretend, what it is, it goes back to the old days when people used to actually take their gold and put it in the bank. And it's still sort of like they still pretend that that's what happened, but it's not. It's
was it in the bank?
Fractional reserve banking is.
Did they put it in the bank, or did they give it to the churches and trust the priests?
I think it depends how far you go back, but
yeah,
the whole. There's been, throughout history, the church and the state and the banking system have been interlinked. What with the canon law and it started getting very, very complex. But yeah.
But the solutions to get out of debt-free offer are the template letters, which is at the top of your website. There's a link for template letters, and it's a 3-step process, isn't it?
It is. Salon, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can do. We're basically, first of all, the most important thing is that we're not actually saying we're not paying, we're not got no intention of paying this whatsoever. We're actually saying we'll be happy to pay as long as you can prove that we actually owe what you're claiming. And in the letters, the first letter, we basically say, please provide verification of your claim, including a lawful contract. Now, it's very important that we use the word lawful contract. We give them other options as well, a hand-signed invoice in accordance with the Bills of Exchange Act, and proof of agency. And we also ask for a deed of assignment as well. All these things they need to provide. And if they provide them, in fact, if they provide virtually any one of them, almost any one of them, will be happy to pay the debt that we owe. Now, strangely enough, all that we ever get back is, oh, the law says we don't have to do this. The law says we only have to do that. Well, that's all fair and fine, but how about just to prove everybody wrong that says that you're committing fraud, you do what we've asked for? And, of course, they never do because they know they would be committing fraud.
See, many people are sending these letters off, and I'm seeing on your website the banks or the debt collectors are actually writing back to people and saying that their client has advised them not to take it further, isn't it?
Yeah, we've had that. We've had debt collectors writing back saying, due to a commercial view, we've decided to cancel this claim and it won't be chasing them, or basically zeroing out the claim for them. And it's, of course, they will say it's out of the goodness of their heart, but in fact, it's because they've been asked to provide qualification of the debt and they can't do it. And so it's at the point where if it might have been passed on 3 or 4 times and they know it's coming to the end of its life expectancy, perhaps in 4 or 5 years when it's getting close to the 6-year limit, they may chase it again. But for the time being, they're basically saying we've washed our hands of it. We know that we're getting nothing here. We may sell it on at a later date.
And what basically is a mortgage and how is that all set up?
Well, that's one of the biggest scams on the planet. And when I say on the planet, I mean all over. Don't think it's just the British government or the American government or the Australian government. If there is a government, then it's there by consensus with the rest. Even Fidel Castro has come out and said we need a one world government. So I'm just trying to say that it's not a separate government issue. This is a planetary issue. And they basically, they all in it together and they produce rules, and I say rules rather than statutes and acts because that's all they really are. There's a type of rule that they want you to abide to, while at the same time them rules don't abide to them. And there's a very interesting, just going off subject slightly, there's a very interesting post at the moment in there where some freedom of information requests have gone into local councils and local courts asking for certain information, and through the responses it would seem that magistrates' courts act as criminal courts and as civil courts as and when it pleases them. And this is confirmed in the freedom of information request, which I suggest you all have a read of.
Okay, so like when all this action goes on, and sometimes the banks or the debt collectors are not that honourable and they do end up sending bailiffs round, is there a solution for that as well?
Generally, it's very rare for it to get to a bailiff stage. If it gets to a bailiff stage, that's usually because either there's been something different they've put in the letters, and obviously you can't keep a track of everybody, and people do get inventive and add things and subtract things. And if you've got no property, it's very almost unheard of being taken to court for it, because they know you've got nothing to lose, and taking them to court is just going to cost more money, and it's going to lower the value of the debt. So it's very unlikely you get taken to court then. The only times it sometimes happens, particularly with mortgages, is if the house gets sold off and there's a debt of say 30, 40, whatever £1,000, then they'll try chasing you. I know a couple that's had a similar thing happen, and they've used the letters off get out of debt to treat them just as debt collectors. And apart from the odd letter every 3 to 6 months, that's the last they heard of this debt collector, and they were chasing for 40 grand. Okay,
so if I take, for example, and I'm going to say this is just hypothetically for now, but if there was somebody that spent or has got a £200,000 mortgage on a 3-bedroom house in London, and they owe something like 40, 50 grand on it, and they find this information out, what can they do about it?
Well, there's a lot of different groups getting together challenging mortgages in themselves, because they're totally fraudulent from the word go anyway. And for the time being, it's more a case of research so you know what you're talking about. So often we get people that come on the forums and think it's a silver bullet, it cures all, and they'll just jump in, send these letters off without even reading them, or without reading what other people have had back. And if you go and read in, like for instance, Lau's quite a popular debt collector, you go and read in their forum, you'll get to see what sort of responses you're likely to get. I mean, one of the things with Lau is they'll usually pass it on to Red. Well, Red is just an internal debt collector for Lau. And then from there, they might pass it on to Hampton's Legal. Well, Hampton's Legal is just an internal part of Lau. So they're all interconnected. And you can kill it with one sentence in your first set of letters, just adding then any of their subsidiary companies. Then you don't have to write to each individual one. But if you've not done that, then you should respond to each individual one as an individual case, because they're trying to purport they're separate companies when they're not. So unless you've actually covered yourself from the beginning, treat every single separate debt as a single separate debt. Okay, yep. And if I move on to something else that I know you've done yourself, Ceylon, and this is a huge con, the electric and the gas meters. Now, the electric or the gas, this is the way I've seen it by what you've pointed out, but it's the grid supplies the electric or the gas to the house, and then a third party like E.ON or British Gas will come in and put one of their meters there. And what they're effectively doing is the pipe that's supplying the gas to the house goes to the house, into the meter, and the meter reads what goes through that little part of the meter, and then it goes back into the pipe and spreads around your house. Now, what British Gas are doing is they're coming around, taking a meter reading and charging you for using their meter. Is that correct? Absolutely. They charge you for... you get a standing charge anyway, but they also charge you for everything that travels through their property. This is why they can go and get a warrant of entry, because you've got some of their property on your property. And although that you get all these terms bandied around like Scottish and Southern and E.ON and all that, and as much as the illusion is they're all separate companies, I can tell you for a start that they are absolutely not. At the end of the line, they are all interconnected, and British Gas runs them all. So, because what you were doing was this at your own property? I'm not too sure on the full ins and outs, but you bought your own meter and put it in? Well, first of all, I wrote a letter off to the Energy Minister asking him to confirm whether my beliefs were correct or not, that anyone that is competent to fit a meter can have their own meters fitted, and can you reply within a certain time limit? And of course, there's never ever a reply comes from any government department when I send letters, and of course no reply came. So therefore they've agreed with what I've said, because I've made them a suggestion. This is my belief. If you think it's incorrect, please write back and let me know. And by not writing back, they've agreed that it's correct. So what I did then is this could be a longish story.
Go for it.
I had got to the point where I was getting a little peed off with the bills. We'd had some bills come through, and they were reasonable and didn't mind paying them. Then we got a letter from a debt collector, not for us, but for a previous tenant, occupier, whatever they want to call it, and it was for £735. Then our next bill comes out, and it's £735. Well, you know, I could have dropped through the floor. I was already aware that if there is a bill with a property, it stays with the property. Even if you move on, they'll still bill you at your new property, but that bill stays with the old property. And they were trying to pull a fast one and get us to pay somebody else's bill. So at this point, we've decided, swear words to the lot of them. They can all get it accepted for value, which is basically what we did. We got the bill come through, and we'd fill it out on the bank gyro credit slip. We'd write across it, accepted for value, exempt from levy, your exemption ID number, which is your birth certificate, your national insurance number, excuse me. We'd sign it, and then we'd turn the back over and endorse the back of it as well, which just means signing the back. And always put a date there as well, because you're basically sort of turning it that into a check. Now, not happy with that. After finding out that these companies, what they do when they get your bank gyro credit slip back, they rip them off and bundle them together. They then send them off to a clearinghouse in Europe, where they get paid again. So they actually get paid twice for every bill. Now, when I realised that, and others research pointed out that companies with over £2 million of profit can actually monetarise promissory notes. And so I accepted the bill for value for the amount plus £10, plus I also sent a promissory note for the same amount with them, and a covering letter explaining everything, and it's simply explaining that if they don't accept it, simply return the bank gyro credit slip and the promissory note, and they never return anything back. There's a site just going up on YouTube to try and get stuff back out there, and you'll see that coming via somebody I know very shortly. And I'll be trying to put the stuff out again. But for the time being, if you want to see what actually happened the second time, I don't want to go on about this too much, but basically, after they tried to go to court to get a warrant of entry, and I sent a notice to the court asking for the warrant to be struck out because of this, and this, and then the warrants were struck out. I send another notice 3 months later. When they send another one, they're going to apply again, and this time, the clerk decides not to put my notices in, so they get a warrant. So they come round, and after me saying, yes, you can come and take the meter, you can come and take that property, that's fine, no problem, I just don't want one of your other meters in, because if I have that, you're contracting with them again, and you're then under a contract again for the prepayment meter. So this went on for probably 4 or 5 hours before eventually the guy that was there, the warrant officer, he got the okay to just remove the meter from the property. So
the okay from, because if I remember rightly, the police were actually there as well, and
no, the police had been called because the warrant officer had been ordered by his boss to call the police, and he called the police up, and of course the police's first reaction: are they being violent? Are they being threatening? We'll be out straight at you. He says, and to his fairness, he did say, actually no, they're being very calm and just talking to me. And the cop's response was, oh, well, it'll be about 2 hours before we can get anyone out to you then. And so we were carrying on chatting during this time. And we'd said all along, all we want is for you to take your property and go. And eventually, it got to the point where their head guy had actually said, yeah, just take the meter. Now, when that happened, they've got the fitter and the warrant officer and 2 coppers at the front gate. No one dares step on the property still because of the denial of access. And the front door was open, the front gate was open. But they just realised that if they did step on there, they could be potentially opening themselves up to a claim, which they would have been in court. So it's now agreed that they're coming to take the meter. So in front of the 2 cops, I say to the warrant officer, you're coming to take the meter and that's it? Yes, he says. I say to the fitter, you come to take the meter and that's it? Yes, he says. So I say, yeah, okay, in we go. And he starts taking the meter. While he's fiddling about taking the meter, the warrant officer gets a call from his boss. And although he didn't say what the words were, I can pretty surmise what went off from his reaction and what he said. His boss had gone something like, are you in? He's gone, yes. His boss has gone, okay, fit a prepayment meter. And his reply has been, well, that's going to cause a few problems. And to be fair, he didn't want to do it. And he's looking around, umming and ahhing. This is his boss telling him he's got to do something. So he's umming and ahhing, and eventually he turns to the fitter and says, are you prepared to fit a prepayment meter? And the fitter goes, no. And so he goes, okay, hangs up on the boss. Then he took the meter, and everyone went except the warrant officer, who stayed on the doorstep for a further 2 hours discussing things like chemtrails and the BBC and 9/11, and that was the end of the first meeting, shall we say, with them.
So from there, they took their meter, and at this point, you've got no meter on top of your pipes. So what did you do from there?
Well, I'd already had my own meter, and I needed my own valve as well.
Yeah.
I'm just reading do you want callers? If there's any questions, yeah, that's fine. No problem. Yeah, they took the meter and they took the regulator, which is the pipe that comes from the actual main supply and just regulates the pressure that goes into your meter so it doesn't get too much. And so I had to go and get a new valve, and I got a fitter to fit them, and that was around about October, because they like to do it just before Christmas. You see, there's only a certain time in the year they can actually take the meter or force you to have a prepayment meter, and that's not during the winter period. So they got it just before the winter period, so they thought fit a prepayment, but it ended up them just taking the meter. Then I had my own fitted, and that went on till about December, when we started getting a British Gas guy at the door. Now, I'll point out here that we have no way ever been in any type of a contract, if gas, electric or anything, with British Gas. So he says, oh, I've come to check on your meter. Is that okay? I says, no. Oh, right. Anyway, that goes on for several weeks.
This is your meter that you bought yourself?
This is our meter that we bought and had fitted, and we were going to supply National Grid with the meter reading once a year. And when they would then go and look for who owns the meter and tell them to bill us, well, you know, I would be billing at a far more generous rate than what they would be.
Yeah. British Gas decided to pop round and say, "Can we have a look at your meter?" Yes. Yeah. Okay.
We were with Scottish and Southern, or Eon, one of the two. I forget which one. And so, yeah, he comes. This is why I'm saying this is where you have to understand that British Gas run the whole lot. The others are just there for face value only. And then we kept saying, no, go away, not interested, no, blah, blah, blah. And this went on till about March time. So we've had, let's put it like this, our house was very, very warm that particular year. And they eventually came on a day in March saying, this was the British Gas guy again. At no point have we had any from the ones that are supposed to be the owners of the particular area, should we say. And he says, right, well, I'm going to get a no notice warrant then. But I just skipped a step. About a week before that, National Grid did turn up at the property wanting to do a safety inspection on the meter. So I know they can get a warrant straight away, and I want to be safe. So, of course, I allow them in to do their safety inspection. And they took a photo of the meter, then disappeared. Then 20 seconds later, it's the British Gas guy. Can I see your meter? And I told him to do one again. Anyway, a week later, he comes round again, and that's where he says to me, this was on the Tuesday, I believe it was, right, we're going to get a no-notice warrant, which apparently, with the other warrants, you get a free a human rights notification that some companies are applying to gain a warrant of entry to your property. Now, you're supposed to get that with everyone, but you don't with some of them. And this particular version of a no-notice warrant is one where they go to court and they don't give you notice that they're going to court. So I know that they issue these type of warrants, or not the no-notice warrant, but warrants of entry the next day. Once a week, they issue them. So I pops down to the court, and there's no warrant applied for at our address. No warrant at all. Anyway, that day passes by, and then about 3 or 4 days later, it's just getting to Tuesday, I think it was again, and there's somebody at the door, and it's somebody trying to get in the door. The front door had a Yale lock, and it was sliding a plastic thing up and down, which would have opened it virtually straight away if it had not been on the deadlock. So I comes down and confronts them. I don't open the door. I say, what are you playing at? And they go, oh, we've got this, we've got that. And you haven't got anything. You claim you've got a warrant? Well, then you're going to need the police, aren't you? And eventually the police come, and I call my friends as well as witnesses. And there's one copper being very aggressive, banging on the back door, demanding me to open the door. And I simply pointed out to him that he was there acting as a constable to prevent a breach of the peace. And what he was actually doing was causing a breach of the peace. And eventually he backed off, especially when friends with cameras turn up. All the police then backed well out of it and just left it to it. Then they drilled the lock, even though we'd pointed out the warrant was fake. We even called Nottingham Magistrates Court, and they said, no, there was no warrant for our address. And we even mentioned the type of warrant, and they said we do not issue them types of warrants. However,
people have to be aware that police in this situation, which you just brought up, they are there for breach of the peace and nothing else. And that is any man, including them and including the bailiffs. Yes. And they should be impartial. And if they're not impartial, then they could be committing a misconduct in public office.
Yes, a very serious offence. The thing is, they've not been pulled up on it enough in the past. But as more and more of us wake up to, hate using that word, people, wake up to what's really going on and start questioning it and challenging them, I think they're going to have to change very quickly. Otherwise, they're going to find themselves in court themselves.
Okay, why do you hate the word people?
Because it's a plural of person, which is your legal fiction, which is the corporation. You know, it's all the rubbish they've got tied into words, making them something else that they're not really, or not that we see them that way.
Now we went over so much information in that them last 10-15 minutes, and if anybody couldn't keep up with that, you've got to look at getoutofdebtfree.org. It's an amazing website. But if I could pull you up on a couple of things, like things that people might not fully understand the process of, like promissory notes and A for V. So can you go into detail on them?
Yeah, this is one of the biggest things that I'm having a real big laugh at the moment. I mean, when I initially put out about the accepted for value and how to do it, I put it out for water only because they can't cut your water off. But everyone adopted it for everything else as well. And yes, it should work in theory, but they won't let this one out the bag. A promissory note, if any of you are listening, just takes out a £10 note, a £5 note, or a £20 note, and underneath where at the top, in very small writing, it'll say, I promise to pay the bearer on the demand the sum of 5, 10, 20, whatever it is. So that is a promissory note. Now, there's certain Lord Denning has made statements and suggested certain things to do with them. There's also the Bills of Exchange Act that talk all about promissory notes, and particularly with these gas, electric and water companies, you will find in their articles of association that they accept promissory notes. And if you think about it, they would have to accept promissory notes because that's all there is.
That's legal tender.
Well, they don't sit. This is where the thing is. In most of their articles, they just refer to them as promissory notes, and they refer to legal tender as something totally different. which is fine by me because it's all promissory notes are legal tender in the fact of the 5s, 10s, and 20s. And there's no law that says you cannot create your own promissory note.
See, and this is the thing. I know people that have tried attempting promissory notes and things like that, and I have witnessed it work to a certain level on certain things, but it doesn't work on other things. But I saw on Get Out of Debt Free, there was a couple of lads who done a few videos, The Bank and the Prom, I think it was called.
Yeah, that's Martin.
Okay, yeah, and they've obviously done some phenomenal research on how, the banking system, quoting case law and all sorts of things. But what did they actually attempt to do? Because one of them was owed the bank, or the bank was telling them that they owed them money or something, wasn't it?
Well, the short version of it is basically they owed $2,500 or thereabouts on a credit card. So they paid a promissory note for $5,000 into their account via one of the tills where you put the envelope in and it's inside, and they add it up and count it later. Now, when they were talking about it initially, they were umming and ahhing and talking with the manager, and they weren't sure what to do. And then at one point, it was actually accepted, and his credit card bill was zeroed, and he had a positive balance of just around about $2,500. And then a day later, they froze the account and shut it. What they'd just done is allow someone to pay in a promissory note, just like if you go and pay cash in, it's exactly the same thing. And there's even a banker talk on Get Out of Debt where John and several others are talking to this bank manager, who we conceal his identity, but he answers honestly, and he basically says, yes, if someone comes into the bank with a promissory note, by law, I would have to accept it. And then one of the questioners says, and would you accept it? He sort of chortled and went, no, I would break the law. And that's coming from a bank manager.
So how would he break the law then? Because he's taking, because they are breaking the law every day.
They break every day, but the Bills of Exchange says that a promissory note, and Lord Denning also says promissory notes are to be treated as cash. So he would be breaking the law by not accepting them, but because this is one of the methods of control they've had over us in the monetary system for such a long time, that with Martin, that was, I think, a little glitch where it slipped through, and then they suddenly realised what they'd done, and so quickly shut the account, closed it, and I'm not sure whether they actually barred him from the branch or not.
See, I think you've hit the nail on the head there with this sort of stuff. And I can remember reading in Mary Croft's book where she talks about all these commercial redemptions and about the straw man, the person being legally defined as a corporation, and this is how they've controlled you. But she also says the reason that she's been able to do it is because not many people know about this banking scam. And at the moment, I'm seeing myself tenfold a year of people waking up to this knowledge and actually going out and trying to do something about it. So with that in mind, that the banks obviously are watching more and more people rebelling and putting their letters in, their estoppels and things like that, so they can see it coming now.
Yeah, well, they're certainly worried about it. We've been mentioned several times in newspapers and that actually boosted us because people saw, these companies are helping others out of debt. So what would you do if you was in debt? The first thing you do, onto this website and look at it. And to be honest, it's not so much about informing people about what's going on. For me, the biggest buzz I get out of it was like we had posted recently in Success Stories, which was someone that had come on and basically they were close to taking a load of tablets to get out of it because they'd had enough. They found the site and they're still here today, and that was bigger than anything for me.
Well, I found your site a few years ago, and I tried out the 3-letter process, and they threatened me with a couple of letters, started putting creditor in big, or debtor, sorry, in big red capital letters and calling me that. But they never took me to court because they know that it's a waste of their time, their money, and they're the ones that create this fraud in the first place. Now,
yeah.
some somebody gave me a question yesterday to put to you. There's a part on your website about copywriting and trademarking the name.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
It's not the way most see it, and we do get the odd agent coming on there trying to stir things up. It's not a copyright like you would see, for instance, Disney copyright or Microsoft copyright. That's a commercial copyright. What we do is a common law copyright. It's just as effective. The difference is it's not recognised as powerfully as if you had registered it. But once you get into the registering side of things, everything can become so much more complicated. So if you just think of it as a common law copyright, and what we do is once you've decided on which version, there's a few versions around, you change your name for the names that are in the templates, and where it's all uppercase, you put yours as all uppercase, and where it's lowercase, upper lowercase, yours go upper lowercase. And you also put the date that you were 18 and also initials to your name. And that sort of like makes it much more individual. So unless someone else that was born with exactly the same name and initials as you on the same date as you and registered their copyright on the same day as you, the chances of someone else having the same details are absolutely almost impossible.
See, I'm lucky that I seem to have lost my name, so I haven't got any liability to that system at all anymore.
Well,
go on.
Me and a friend have been working on this premise for such a long time, and we are of the conclusion that the name is the problem. As long as you're prepared to stand up and say that's me, then you're going to end up in the poo each time.
Well, this is how they've done it to everyone. They've educated everybody in their government schools. And yes. The first thing you do at school every morning is you put your hand up and register the name.
Yes.
And by the time you're 16 years old, you don't even question it. People come up to you and say, "Who are you?" And you say, "I am Joe Bloggs." And it's like, no, you're not. You're not a name. That's the programming that has got you enslaved in the Matrix.
Yes. Absolutely. We've looked into this and we've managed to trace it back to Zero Dynasty Egypt. Basically, there was a rather nasty pharaoh called Names, something along them lines. But basically, he gave himself the right to cause harm. And all depictions of him show him usually crunching on somebody's head. Somebody else has got in his hand, he's got their head in his hand and he's got a big stick to beat everyone. And we think that this is where the name actually comes from, and the name is the harm. And you just check it out yourself. The pharaoh Nemes. In fact, if you look up where name comes from, it usually comes along in the dictionary as origin unknown, but it also mentions Names, which is an ancient pharaoh.
Okay. Well, with the name, the way I see it, I'm totally with you on that 100%. I do think it's the registration of this name that enters you into that system of commerce. And the only solution I can see to all of this is we're finding it out. So we're deep in the poo-poo anyway. They've enslaved us, but we seem to be finding out this information and sharing it. But if you can't step out the system because you feel you need to use that name, you need to use your bank account, you have bills coming in that name, your job, your wages, it's all in that name, then if you ever have children, don't register your children and put them through the same bullshit that your families and generations after generations have had to go through.
Well, the children's a big one because in with the debts, which is just used to keep us, subservient, and the council tax, which is again used to keep us poor. They're using all the monies gained from these to get at the children and basically steal them, and they're giving them to the paedophile gangs. I mean, it's coming out about the paedophiles in Parliament and the BBC. They're all over the place. They're in the police force, the health service, the schools, and they're all in this big gang together. And this is why it's being kept so hush-hush. about the child basically raping that's going on. They don't want us all to connect it all together and realise all this fundraising, or they call it taxing, is there to support and cover the fact that they've got the SS, and they're not called the SS for any particular poor reason, as I'm sure you can figure out. They're in there. Their job is to go in there and steal children and supply them to the paedophiles that want them.
Yeah, on that note about paedophiles, BBC, there's an activist out there of the name Bill Maloney who does Pie Mash Films, and he's released a video recently, and it seems, and this doing this kind of stuff, standing up to this corrupt system, is very stressful on the levels of you can get attacked from many different angles, like Bill has. And he seems to be having a real hard time of it late. And Maria, his wife, has put up a video that he seems to be having a mental breakdown. So much respect to Bill Maloney for what he does. And let's hope that he carries on.
I mean, we've all had it said. I mean, you've been attacked, I've been attacked. Almost anyone that speaks out and gets the attention of the public is almost instantly attacked as, I mean, I've been called a member of the 1% and all sorts of rubbish like that. And you just know when it's getting to that stage, you're getting that close, they're really starting to worry.
Well, it's a shame that John can't be in the call. He keeps dropping in and out because there's a real heavy internet troll, and he tried attacking John via a video I'd done of John down at Truth Juice. I've done a video of him, and I love John's work, much respect to him. But what he done is he twists and turns and manipulates things, and he wouldn't put up the whole video because then it would expose himself. But he took a Photoshop of one scene of John standing in front of a graph. It was a chart, and it was like an IBM chart. Yeah. And the thing was, he was pointing out that this is the type of charts that the government use. But he won't put a video up because then he's just saying that John uses these IBM models. So it's just like attack. And that troll, I don't know if he's attacked you at all. His name's Brian Davis, and he goes by the name of Bada Bing.
Oh, yeah. He had a
and
go
it makes me... Go on, carry on. He had a go at you as well.
He had a go at me a few days ago when I just... Oh, it was because the CIA book had banned me yet again. So I was just getting some impent anger out, calling them everything I could think. And then there was one coming on trying to say Facebook's great, and then Badder stars. And at that point, I think, if I could remember, I'd go back and ban him. But to be honest, he doesn't bother me that much. He's just an idiot, really.
Well, he is an idiot, but it makes me question what his motives are, because nobody knew of this character until January last year.
Yeah.
And what happened was I was exposing the Occupy movement down in London, and he contacted me and wanted to help me out. He bought me a laptop. I felt indebted to him. I've gone round to his house, and he's attacking everyone around me. And I noticed at first that it was a bit odd, but he wasn't attacking me, and he was being nice to me, and he was sticking up for me. But what he would do, I would tell him that I don't want anyone to know that I'm around your house, and then he would phone up people like Psycho Driller and MC Elijah and some really good people and say, hey, look who I've got here. I've got Dom here. So then he associates me with him, and then he can get into their circles and attack them. And the only solution to a troll like this is don't even give him any acknowledgement, because he thrives off it, and he'll drag you into an argument, and then he'll Photoshop, copy and paste and print screen everything you've said and twist and manipulate it and then put it up. This guy is sick and twisted in the head to the point of, I've seen court paperwork where he's tried to use his own child who's got autism to defraud Staffordshire Council by saying that the gas meter was leaking and it could have caused him and his child harm. And he's admitted to me that his child wasn't even there, so it's fraud. And he attacked Staffordshire Council the same that he attacks us lot. Yeah. And it's like, the guy's delusional. I've seen his medical paperwork. He's delusional. That may lead to psychotic episodes. And he's definitely like that. But as I'm saying, don't give him any energy. I think we've been talking about him for the last 10 minutes. So shall we move swiftly on to another subject?
Yeah, we can do. TV's good.
TV, yeah, go for it.
Right. TV licensing. First off, you've all got to understand Well, you don't have to understand. How about just agreeing that there is no law which states you have to pay TV license? There is an act, but that's not a law. Now, what they will do is they will threaten you. And isn't it odd how it's always £1,000 fine if you don't fill out the census, which I never did. £1,000 fine. Did I get taken to court? No. Why not? Because they never got the name. Then they come round for the voters register. It's £1,000. No thanks. Not interested. Did I get to court? No. TV license, same thing. Oh well, blah blah. Now, when I first started messing with TV licensing, for the first year, I was just having fun playing with them, getting them come to the door, and they were saying this and they were saying that. And, when you don't give your details, there's nothing they can do. And I had them up on YouTube, but then they decided to wipe that particular account. But the thing with them you need to remember is they have no right whatsoever. They give it to a private corporation called Capita, which has nothing to do with the BBC, but they seem to handle a lot of their money. And then these guys come round and threaten you. Well, after a year of and 4 visits and numerous letters, piles and piles of red letters, you're under investigation and all that sort of rubbish, I decided after the last one where he just caught me early in the morning and I opened the door and he goes, TV licensing, and I'm not interested, shut the door in his face. So then after that, I decided I had enough of this, so I'll send them a denial of access, which is available on the site. And it basically, your house, everyone's allowed to come to your door and knock on your door and ask for this and ask for that and, directions and that sort of thing. It's called an implied right. Well, you can put up a notice which withdraws that implied right of access, which means that the only ones then allowed to come to your door are the postman delivering mail or someone asking directions. Now, as soon as I sent this denial of access off to the BBC, I got a letter back about 2 weeks later saying, thank you for your denial of access, and it's duly noted, blah, blah, blah. We won't be contacting you or sending one to visit you for 2 years. However, after 2 years, we may send a letter to see if your licensing needs have changed. Oh, and by the way, just for our paperwork, can you just give us your name? Well, of course, they didn't get the name. They want the name. Oh.
Typical Ceylon.
Yeah, and it was I'm not going to say what species it was, but I'm sure you can figure. And so they wanted the name. I didn't get that. I didn't fill in that paperwork. So now I've got a contract by them stating that they're not going to bother me for 2 years. I've got a denial of access up, and I've also got the case law. And I've also got a copy of the denial of access used by Nottingham City Council in Victoria Centre. So if they ever turn up and start saying it doesn't apply to us, there's no such thing, I've got everything you need to prove that it absolutely does apply to them. And like I say, they've never visited me since. And fair play to them, they've not even wrote to me since acknowledging my denial of access. So that's fine. And when the 2 years are up, then if they do write to me asking if my needs have changed, the answer will be no, they won't have.
Now, somebody's come up with a question, and this is on topic of what we're talking about here, because what we've gone through is a lot of research, and it can be seen to be a lot of hassle as well. And the question was, with respect to the speaker, most people would not want this sort of hassle. And I think, i.e., what they mean is the enforcement officers. Well, basically, it's like a corporate control state. They will come at you from whatever angle they need to. And this hassle would put most people off doing anything. My question is, this is whoever's put this to me, why doesn't the speaker just expose this to the public media, as it is a huge scandal? If it is true, the media seems to be exposing lots of other scandals at the moment. So I don't think people really get that the media is all owned by just a handful of people, and they control from this medium of the media. And to get stuff into the mainstream media is so hard. Have you ever managed to do it yourself, Ceylon?
Hardly ever. One of the things, I mean, because I talk about some of the many cures for cancer, AIDS, and everything else that's out there. And one of the things those that haven't perhaps looked into it a little bit more than they should have come back with is, well, if that was real, if that Bob Beck device cured cancer and cured AIDS and cured the common cold, it'd be on the TV, it'd be in the newspapers. No, like you pointed out, they're owned by a handful of lowlights, I'll refer to them as, that do not want the information out. I mean, Stanley Meyer was running cars on water, nothing else but pure water back in the 80s. He was offered $1 billion back in the 1980s to shut up about it. He refused, so they killed him. Bob Beck, his device, it appeared in 3 medical journals in the US, and then they scrubbed it. It was gone, not to be heard of again. Joanna Budwig.
Tell people what the Bob Beck device is and what it's capable of. The Bob Beck device,
actually, I think is one of the best pieces of kit anyone can ever have. And the reasons I say that is, I'll just briefly go off track slightly. About 4 years ago now, I'd recorded an episode called Survivors, which the BBC were putting out. And it was about this virus that got out and it killed almost all the population apart from very few. And of course, it was chaos and all that sort of thing. And a friend of mine came to visit who knows what I talk about, but thinks I'm, a little bit loopy. And I pointed out that this is exactly what they've got planned for us, And he goes, it's just a TV show. Anyway, to cut the story short, that was in January. April comes and we get the Mexican swine flu epidemic. And he was the first one to phone me up and says, yeah, you told me this was coming. Okay, I'm starting to see that there might be more to what you say than what I've been giving you credit for. And the reason I go down that is that when I first seen the Bob Beck DVD, and you can still get it on YouTube. It's about 1 hour 57 minutes long. I recommend watching it. When I watched it, I thought that can't be real, because if that's real, wow. So I'm always one of these that will put pen to paper and I will try it. So I ordered one, and what Bob Beck had discovered back in the 1990s, 91. Was that a Dr. Kelly and a Dr. Wyman, and you can check all this out on the internet, at the Albert Einstein University of New York, had discovered a cure for AIDS. Steps back in amazement. A cure for AIDS in 91, yet we haven't got it today. Anyway, what they did is they found that they got a petri dish full of AIDS-infected blood, and they put 2 electrodes into the blood and passed a microampere current through the blood. And when they then looked at the viruses under the microscope, they found that it had all locked shut the way it was. It couldn't mutate anymore. And the reason that AIDS was so potentially devastating was because each time your body, for instance, if you imagine the AIDS cell is a circle and your body creates a circle to attach to it and kill it, by the time it's created that circle and got to it, it's changed to a square. So it didn't work. Well, by this method of locking the virus shut, it could no longer mutate, and your natural immune system could destroy the virus. So Bob Beck started making some of these devices after doing some research into it, because, like I say, it vanished, and started giving them to sufferers he knew that had AIDS. And so they trot off and they do what they said they do. Anyway, a few months later, they come back and they say, Bob, you're not going to believe this. I've not got AIDS anymore. And of course, Bob, who was a doctor of science, by the way, not a doctor of the way that we normally think things, but he was a doctor of science. And he said, yeah, I know, because he understood the scientifics behind it. And no, they said, no, Bob. Yeah, I know it's cured me of AIDS, but I had cancer as well, and it's cured me of cancer. Well, that's a big statement. Even 7, 8 years ago when I heard it, I thought, whoa, that's interesting. Now, it also made a thing called colloidal silver, which I'd not heard of. And basically, I'll briefly explain colloidal silver is if you have a glass of water, you put these 2.9999 pure silver rods into the device, and you put the rods actually into the water, and they come electrolysis goes off between them, and positively charged silver ions come from the silver into the water, and you leave that for 10 minutes, then it's done. And if you've got normal water, tap water, bottled water, anything like that, it'll have a cloud in it, a grey mist. This mist is the positively charged silver ions that have attached to the contaminants in the water, and they weigh it down. And you need to just give it a quick stir so it spreads out throughout the glass. If you use distilled water, you won't even see there's any difference. It still looks like a clear glass of water.
Well, when I've made it with distilled water, it's got a goldy colour.
I've heard some suggest that. Mine's always stayed pure clear to me. So whether there was a contaminant in there, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, and the basics of that is pure silver used to be used in the medical trade on hypodermic needles, dishes, and things like that, because pure silver has been proved that no known parasites can sit on it.
Yes,
so,
viruses, bacteria, pathogens, it kills them all.
So if you're stripping a bit of pure silver off into water and then putting it inside your body, then what happens to the parasites inside your body?
They get killed, and then you get them out your body through means of going to the toilet or crying or sneezing. That's ways of getting it out. Now that with the colloidal silver, that stops you from basically getting the coughs, cold, and these virus threats that they keep putting out, like where the swine flu suddenly appeared 4 different places all over the world at the same time, even with no connection to Mexico whatsoever. Well, when you realise you've got a cure for all viruses, then it doesn't scare you anywhere near as much. But coming back to the actual main characteristic of the Bob Beck device, 6 months after I'd got it, my mother-in-law at the time had, she'd had something bad by the doctor says you need you to go to the hospital. They went to the hospital. The hospital says the doctor will call you when he wants you to come in for results. A few days later, the doctor calls her up. I think it was over the weekend. So on the Monday, he calls her up and says, can you come in for your results and can you bring someone with you? Now, she had chest cancer, lung cancer, and she didn't know it at the time, but they go into the doctor's and he pops the X-ray out on the screen. And he says, you see this big black mass you've got on your chest here? And they go, yes. So, well, that's cancer. I want you back at the hospital in a week's time. I want to see how much it's spread. And they came out of the doctors and they called everyone up and they were saying that she's going to die. And when they called me, I simply said, oh, well, that's no problem. I'll just use the Bob Beck device. And I got exactly the response I expected, which was, you're effing mad, you're crazy. And that's the sort of thing that you get, because they expect to see it on TV or in the newspapers or magazines if this sort of thing was real. And when they control that, you're not going to see it there. So, anyway, she came down and she used the device for 3 days. Now, Bob said originally he thought it was 30 days. However, years and years more research, he got it down to 5 days. And they only used it for 3 days. And then they didn't come down the following day. And then the next day they were back at the hospital again. And they did all the tests they'd done the previous week. And they came back negative. There was no signs on x-rays. There was nothing wrong with her at all. And that's when I realised that this does do what it says it does.
And there are many cures coming out of the cupboard for things like cancer, HIVs, and all sorts. Even there's a great documentary called Run from the Cure.
Yes, Rick Simpson, yes.
And this is just teaching people how you can have these literally cures for things like cancers and things like that. But they're all frightened of calling it a cure. Well, if it gets rid of cancer, then surely it's a cure as such. But when you're coming out with things like this and being public, then they're either going to call you a fruitcake, a conspiracy theorist and things like that.
Yeah.
But this is how it is. And I suppose you get flat out busy with Get Out a Debt-Free website.
Yes, yeah.
And I bet you get like literally thousands of hits a week. And
Yep.
I have people contacting me about you guys saying, "Oh, they never talk back to me," and it's like, well, the thing is, I know how hard it is to reply to all messages when you've got social networking sites from Facebook and Twitter and things like that. I'm not on Twitter myself, but Facebook, you've got YouTube, you've got Get Out of Debt Free. If you're doing just them three alone and then going around the country doing talks and things like that, yes, we're going to be late sometimes. Sometimes we're not even going to make it. Sometimes we can't even talk to you guys because we're so flat out. And I have a look at every message, but it doesn't mean I'm ignorant if I don't get back. And when people have contacted me about Get Out of Debt Free and say, well, I find it rather rude because they're being ignorant and haven't talked back to me. And it's not ignorance. This is what I try and explain to people. It's flat out busy when you're giving out remedies like this.
Yeah, so some come on and they'll type a question and they expect a response within an hour. Well, I mean, you've seen how the site's actually grown and grown and grown. And it can take you a whole day just to go through the whole from top to bottom. And sometimes others answer with exactly how I would have answered. So there's no point me even getting involved in that because they've given the correct information. And but I do understand that some like to get a contact from me because it's like I'm the one that apparently knows it all, even though I don't. I've done a lot of work there. So I can understand that. But if other members are giving you the answer and it's the correct answer, and I like to say I do check them all, then there's no need for me to even enter into there and just leave them to it. And, you know, you don't have to speak to us because there's a lot of members on there that have been doing it so long and they will just tell you all the good sides. They'll even tell you when things haven't worked well, which is something that often others don't like to do. But if something doesn't work, we'll say, we did this, it didn't work. And that's all you can be. You can tell it the way it is, and that's it, really.
Well, this is it. It's like, as you said earlier, it's no silver bullet for anyone. And, well, I don't know, I'm never going to stop being me. It's the only way I can explain it. I've found out this information, and I feel that for the future generations that people need to know this stuff. Otherwise, they're going to be enslaving their own families in the future by their naivety to this system enslaving them. But if we can go back onto mortgages, a guy called Spiky Man has put a question across talk about mortgages being void, i.e. terms and conditions, and are credit agreements, are they only relative for loans of 25k or less?
Well, credit agreements, they work pretty much broad. They work for any sort of amount. The main thing to remember with any sort of credit agreement, if it was before, I think it was April or May or June of 2007, they didn't have all the correct rubbish in to tie you down. So if it was before that, it's generally classed as unenforceable. And even just ignoring that type of debt, is it usually enough for it to go away? However, I would never suggest you ignore anything until you know what you're doing. With mortgages, if I can explain it like this, you go to a bank and you want to say you've seen some land for £100,000 and you go to the bank and I think, I'd like to buy this £100,000, and the bank manager goes, yeah, let's just check it out. Yeah, you can afford this. Here you go, fill out this agreement. So you fill out the agreement. Now, as we pointed out earlier, when you fill out an agreement, as soon as you sign it, you change it into a promissory note, which is then sold on by the bank. So you've actually created that £100,000 for that land. You created it there and then. And the bank sells it, securitizes it, right? Then they get you to fill out another agreement. And there's where the scam, the fraud comes in. They get you to fill out an agreement stating that you're going to use that land that you've just bought as surety for that mortgage, which, let's not forget, you created in the first place. So they're tricking you now to using your land to pay for the mortgage which you created in the first place. Now, it doesn't sound too tricky, does it?
So if I put this into simple layman's terms, and if there was no such thing as money, and I went out there on a piece of land and I built with my bare hands a house. And then a friend come along and said, that's a nice house. I'll tell you what, sign this piece of paper and I'll loan it to you, and then you've got to pay me for the privilege.
Yeah.
So how do people get duped?
Because they don't realise that here's the trick. Here's where it becomes fraud and knowingly fraudulent. When they get you to sign that other piece of paper using your house as surety for the loan, right? You could only have used that house as surety for that loan if you owned it outright without any debt on it whatsoever, which you did do. As soon as you signed the agreement, you have paid for that house. But they trick you into using it to cover the loan which they fraudulently made you.
So what would you say to people that say, and this has been said for many, many years, well, decades, even with things like the sovereign citizen movement, as they call it in America, they say that anybody that's attempting this sort of stuff is just a freeloader, and they're trying to use the system, and they're anti-government.
Well, I wouldn't say I was anti-government. I would say I was anti-corruption, and it's becoming blatantly obvious to everyone that almost everyone in government is corrupt and looking out for their own selves. You've just got to look at it. When it comes for a vote on increasing their wages by nearly 30%, they're all there going yes. When it's a vote on cutting benefits, nobody's in there. Nobody gives a hoot, because it's look after my own self and you lot can all. Bear in mind, these are our servants.
Yeah. And they're not serving too well, though, are they? That's the problem. And another thing that we both know a lot about, because we've obviously seen many people attempt this sort of thing, and even there's a name out there who's been putting out phenomenal information, Dean Clifford, who got arrested this week.
Yeah.
Well, he's been arrested many times doing this sort of stuff, and he promotes out the information that you don't need a driving license, you don't need insurance, you don't need tax. But the problem is, it might be honourable to know all this information and everything, but if people are going to be driving about without a driving licence, insurance and tax, and then claiming some common law standing, then they get their cars taken off them and they have a court case. And when they go to the court case, or if they don't go to the court case, it doesn't matter on their standing at all when they're trying these free-man processes, because they'll ignore it all the time. The courts have got these documents like Meads versus Meads, which is written up by a Canadian judge on how to deal with people that are going to go in with these rebellion stances. Yeah. But what my problem is people that go out there, and if they try out this process, and one of the first that I heard about in the Freeman movement that was trying it was a young lad called Rich Harrison.
Yes.
And he went out and he tried it, and he took a lot of advice of people like Veronica Chapman, who runs FMOTL, and he ended up having his car taken off him. He had court cases, he had a fine, and he went to prison. And when he came out of prison, he's not been promoting out the idea that this stuff works. But there's many people out there that have tried this out time and time again, and it doesn't seem to work. It just gets people's cars taken off them, and even prison and fines and things like that. So what's your opinion on this driver license and driving without insurance and tax and everything?
Until others have done it and they've not lost their vehicles, I wouldn't go anywhere near it. I really wouldn't go anywhere near it. Unless you've got a couple of £100, not too bothered about, then I'd try it. But
don't do it with a 26 grand Merc.
Well, that would be silly beyond belief. But and don't get me wrong, I know that some do go out and try it, and the main problem is they see it, they get a bare grasp of it, and they go for it, and then as soon as they're asked a question that they can't answer, they lose the vehicle. Well, that's because you didn't know what you were doing. And if I'm saying I wouldn't go near it yet, and yet there's some that are just finding it and are doing it, they're going to lose it. They're going to lose every time. Until we find the specific thing. There is something that's doing the rounds at the moment, which suggests that sending your V5 off, but it being unsigned, means that it's not fully registered. So, you know, you can get away with it. But again, this could be just somebody posting that's never done it. So, you know, don't just act on anyone's information until you've at least had some sort of way of checking it out or testing it before you go for it.
Well, I remember years ago, there's a guy who runs a website called landofthefree.co.uk, and we were looking at the V5, and there's a section on that which says, quite simply, that you're letting them know that you're exporting it out of the United Kingdom. And could there not be a remedy in there somewhere where if you're exporting it out of the United Kingdom, and we know that the United Kingdom is actually a corporation, then would it not come under their body of rules then?
Possibly, but I would probably go along the lines of you're exporting it out of the United Kingdom, the actual landmass, and into their Admiralty mass.
Well, I'm glad I don't have to put up with any of that hassle either anyway. You know, it's just another one of them. It's you recognise this corruption, you see it coming from every single angle. And I feel sorry for people when they have their homes, their cars, their children, and everything taken off them for being honourable.
The biggest thing to do is not just jump straight in. Don't believe a word any of us you hear on here or whatever says. Don't jump straight in. Read thoroughly and read. You know, like if you go and get out of debt and you've got, say, a dealing with a particular bank, look for that bank and read all there is on that bank, or a particular debt collector, look for that debt collector and read all there is. Then when you've read how other people have had responses from them and you get exactly the same response, it'll be, oh, this is just that template response. Whereas rather than just doing the letter, sending off and then go, oh, I've got this letter, if you'd read the other people that have had the same thing, they would say, yeah, we've had that every time. That's a standard response. And therefore, you're taking the stress off yourself. And, of course, the standard thing that others like to say is, yeah, but I want to know now. You might want to know now, but if I tell you now and somebody asks you 2 weeks down the line for the exact same information, you can't repeat it, you're done for. Whereas if you've gone and looked it up yourself, found it out yourself, that'll stick in your head for the rest of your life. And whenever anyone questions anything, you'll be go, bang. There's this act, there's that act, there's this. And you can answer it, because we only get tripped up when we don't know the answer. And we don't know the answer because we haven't looked into it.
And this is how it's done. You know what I mean, Ceylon? I couldn't agree with you more again. It's like my own personal path. I started finding this out, testing stuff out, trying the free man process, the notice of intent and claim of right and affidavits. And that got me into a lot more trouble than like any of my past when I was involved with the police. And believe me, I was involved with the police quite a lot in the past, and I'd only been to prison once in my life until I found out this free man stuff and tried it out, and I've been in prison more times since. But I've found remedy for myself, but this is my own personal path, and it's not necessarily anybody else's remedy. Through my own path, some strange things have happened. Like, if I get arrested now, they'll take my fingerprints and it comes back as name unknown. So if you've never had your prints taken from the police, why bother giving them a name? Why bother giving them a signature? That's how they can get you.
Absolutely. And that's the key. The problem is, and it's not a problem, it's actually a very, very good trait that we have. Generally, we are very trusting and loving. So someone says, can I have you, what's your name? We go, oh, it's Bob Smith. And that's a good thing if everybody else is the same. But when you realise that we're dealing with a bunch of corrupt lowlifes that are out to make whatever they can, however they can, out of us, because we're so honest and trustworthy, then you need to start changing tact to deal with them particular corrupt, whatever you want to call them.
Okay, I want to move on to another subject I don't think we've touched on too much, is council tax.
Yes.
Is there a remedy for council tax?
As I said right at the beginning, there's a very, very interesting post at the moment. It's in the latest news and the council tax forum. Without giving too much away, because I'm looking into this, and so are lots of others as well, because there's just something stinks there, and there is remedy, and it is going to become more and more apparent as these next few, maybe weeks, if not months, elapse, because there's so much going to come out that's going to blow the lid off the whole council tax scam.
Okay, right then. Well, another thing that you're into exposing is 9/11, or it's a subject that you know it can't possibly be what the official story is.
It was the first thing that woke me up. When I saw it, and I saw it live, I was actually sat at home at the time. I just popped in from work for half an hour, and this was on telly, and it's like, whoa. And then when the buildings were demolished, you look at it and you was like, there's something not right there. I don't know what it is, but there's something not right. And then we got the media barrage of Bin Laden in a cave, somehow talking to these 19 terrorists, 5 on each plane, apart from one that didn't get on the last one, only 4 on that one, and they all died, obviously, because all the planes were shot down. Well, it turns out the BBC's interviewed 7 of them after 9/11, so therefore, how did they manage that? Can they speak to the dead? And the anomalies, once you really look into it, are just so horrendous. It would, if you were writing a story for a film, it would get thrown out as being too unrealistic. That's how bad it was. But that's how they planned it, because they wanted it to look so... It couldn't be anything but what they'd said. And just the slightest bit.
If the lie is big enough,
yes,
or tell the lie big enough, then the people will believe it, because
yes,
it just seems too far out.
Goering.
So I'm just looking through my book now for questions that I wrote down earlier, and there was one. The lawful bank. What do you know about the lawful bank?
I've been to a Roger talk, and so I know as much as everyone else on there.
So I want to get Roger on to talk about this lawful bank, and I don't know, people say that I've got a bit of a naive view to it, and there's also other things out there which claim to be money reforms, like MPE, which is mathematically perfected economy, they call it. And there's a lot of conflicting remedies, and Roger doesn't bother explaining too much about the lawful bank to me, because the way I see it is the only way you can buy into it is with fiat currency. So I just don't get how that is going to be any kind of financial reform.
I'm with you on that. I have no particular negative feelings to the lawful bank or anything. But while the word bank's there, for me, that just leaves it open to abuse, and we just need to look where we are and how the abuse has gone off. That if it's there, it could happen again. I'm not saying it would or will. I'm saying it's a possibility. I think that we need to start, and a lot are going down, go back to trading. No, I don't think we need to go that far. We don't need to go back into the Stone Age to carry on. If we all knew what we know between us, if everyone knew that, that would be the end of it, because we would all go and do whatever job it is, and for no pay, but at the same time we would have no gas bills, no electric bills, no mortgage, no rent, and no food bills. We just go and get what we need, and we don't be greedy. We go and only get what we need, and the drivers that supply them the whatever we decide we're going to go for, they're doing it for free. The ones that, well, you wouldn't need anyone working in there unless you wanted it to make sure it was clean, then they'd be doing it for free, and everyone's doing everything they can, everything for free. And then there's nothing for anyone else to get better than everyone else, because we can, if we want why anyone want the latest iPad or whatever it is, I've no idea, but if you want it, well, you can have it. So therefore you've got no need that's the end of crime overnight. You've got no need for anyone to go and rob anyone else because they've got a big TV or whatever, because you can just go in the store and get one.
So, let's go back a point on the banking system. Do you think the banking system is fundamentally orchestrated to collapse?
Yes.
Now, when this big collapse comes, and we've got to take into account that if a collapse happens and there's no physical cash or even digital cash to swap about anymore because they've collapsed the system, then within the first 24 hours of people realising this, it's going to be complete mayhem, in my opinion. I think it would be like an apocalyptic style state.
Well, that's what they would want, but I tend to be of the belief that yes, it could be dodgy times, but at the same time, I think that will make us bind together more. So like, we say you live on a close where you may only know people either side of you. Well, suddenly you'll have to know everyone, and you'll all have to work together. Like, what do you have? Well, we have this, and we have that, and work and bring it back together. See, they want us to go down the old mayhem, chaos, order out of chaos sort of crap that the New World Order spouts about. But I don't think it'll go that bad. I think, well, those that aren't aware will suddenly get it, and that's the end of the game for them. If everyone knows what we know, that's the end of the game. It's all over.
Well, this is it. This is why I would like to see a nice transition of people mellowly waking up to this information and realising that they can do something about it. Because a few years ago, I didn't know what I could forage, and then let alone what I could turn into medicinal remedies for people and tinctures and things like that. And I've been teaching myself all kinds of things after I left the system that I can learn for myself and pass on to each other freely. But I just see it as if let's say, take London for instance, if the banking system collapsed and you've got all these fully urban areas and people don't know, their foraging is inside a supermarket and their food is inside tins or plastic boxes, and what is actually inside there is not really food, so they're not getting the nutrients that your body needs, let alone your brain. So when it comes down to all the fluoridation of water and the aspartame and the SMG that's in the food, MSG in the foods, it's like people have been controlled for so long that if it collapsed, look at the London riots last year or the year before, it kicked off in such a fashion, and that was all controlled, in my opinion, as well.
Absolutely.
So are they going to orchestrate something on a mass worldwide scale that is going to cause people to riot, and then like they'll go, okay, look, we can't have this, there's a problem. The problem is there's no money. The reaction, everybody is fighting and rioting. The solution would be, oh, hang on a minute, the monetary system's collapsed. If we all get these little RFID chips, microchips, under the skin, we can carry on. But anyone that doesn't have a chip, well, you can't be looked after by the government, and then they'll be the saviour again. That's the way I'm seeing what's going on.
That's how they would like it to go, but I think there's far too many becoming aware, and I think it's probably already past where they could do anything about it, the amount that's growing.
And on your website it says, do not follow the advice of the Citizens Advice Bureau, debt counsellors or financial advisors. Why is this?
They're all in it together. Not necessarily as they're making money from it, but they are taught to toe the line of, you send them to this corporation to deal with debts and for consolidation, you send them to this one to deal with others, you send them to this one to deal with others. At the end of the day, all of them centres are a part of the system and want you to play as though you're a part of the system. Though when you wake up and realise that it is, and I get a lot of stick for calling it a game, but it is just a game. It's just that they've known the rules and we're learning them. They've had thousands upon thousands of years to know exactly every rule there is. we're just finding out lately. So we're playing catch up, but we're catching up far quicker than they thought we would. You still there?
Oh, sorry, I had it on mute then, and I was talking away. I was saying about parking notices. When they come along, they put a parking notice on your car and tell you you've got to pay a certain amount of money within a certain amount of time, otherwise it doubles. How many of them have you had, and how do you deal with them?
Hundreds. But when I first started doing it, it was simple. I realised that a parking ticket stuck on your windscreen isn't actually a parking ticket. It's an offer of a contract. And any contract can be rejected within 72 hours. So I used to write across at a 45-degree angle in red ink, refuse for cause, and a couple of other lines of just lines, basically, and send it back to him. And then I'd get a letter back saying, due to a technical error, basically, because I'd rejected their offer of a contract within 72 hours, but they wouldn't say that, the ticket has been cancelled. And then I went on to tell everybody else. And so everybody started doing it all over the country. And suddenly they realised they were going to lose a lot of money. Not that it's real in the first place, but, you know, if everybody started doing this. So they decided they were going to start ignoring contract law and just send it straight to Northampton Bulk Clearing Centre, which is a privately run, basically an office with no judges or magistrates. So anything that happens in there isn't lawful. It can't, because there's no judge, magistrate or clerk of the justice or anyone even trained in law to deal with anything. And yet they issue warrants day in, day out, yet all unsigned.
Yeah. And when these people come around, it says certain things on there, like these warrants that the bailiffs can use reasonable force. What the hell does reasonable force mean?
Anything they can get away with.
Exactly. And when the police are there and they're supposed to be impartial and there for just breach of the peace, they're not allowed to smash in doors and cave things in and start dragging you out. That's them acting unlawful then.
Yep.
Now,
all the police are ever there for is to prevent a breach of the peace. Nothing else. Not to help anyone else, not to break doors open, not to assault anyone. They are there to make sure that the peace doesn't get breached. Unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, they end up breaching the peace.
With these debt collections and everything like that, these companies actually go out there and buy the debts, and they buy the debts in bulk, and they buy them for pennies in the pound. Is that correct?
Yeah. When it's first sold on, it's anywhere between 10 and 25 pence in the pound. Then each time it gets sold on, it's less and less. And the simple thing to think about there is, if they could enforce it in any way, why have they sold it? Why has the first bank or credit card company sold it? Why has the debt collector sold it after that? If they could enforce it, you'd think that the bank or the credit card company would enforce it, because they'll get the whole lot that way, wouldn't they?
Well, the thing is, the Occupy movement. Now, I was talking about this within the Occupy movement, and they seem to have gone out and done something that seems to be pretty good, but I don't know what they're doing with it. Now, the idea was, why couldn't we go out and set up our own debt collection company or whatever type of company, and then go and buy a bulk of debts for pennies in the pound, and then write off to these people and say, we've bought your debt. There's no longer any need for you to pay. But if you'd like to donate so we could pay off other people's debts, would people actually buy into that and then pay off other people's debts? And would that not actually get the national debt down? Or how would that work out?
Possibly. But you by doing that, you're actually saying that the system's correct in the first place. Plus, I'm almost certain there will be some rule somewhere where you have to actually get at least X amount, whether it be 10, 20% of the debt. You have to actually claim 10, 20%. Don't forget, they'll go through your books, your accounts, And if you're saying this is satisfied for whatever, then they would expect to see your accounts suggesting that, because then they can tax you on it, of course.
But if you are, if people, well, because like you buy the debt anyway, so you're only asking them to settle it. Couldn't they settle it with a signature? Just ask them to give you a signature, and you can fill out the promissory note on their behalf.
Yes, but then you'd have to put that promissory note into your bank and get your bank to accept it. And if you haven't got more than £2 million in your account, they're probably not going to.
Yeah. That's the whole problem, isn't it? Money makes the world go round.
They've had the system so stitched up. They've thought of everything, they think. But there's so much coming out where they've just been a little bit lax. And it's helping us to understand it more.
Did you ever go to the Occupy movement? Because this is a shame that John's not in the conversation, because I saw John down at Occupy. He'd done a couple of talks down there. And, well, I know my own opinions on what Occupy was, but did you ever go to Occupy yourself?
Just the Nottingham one.
What was that like?
Okay, but the end was, bearing in mind that those that were seemed to be running it were explained, like, you don't go to court because it's their playing field. And then when they came to get them evicted, they got a solicitor to act for them. And of course, as soon as you're a ward of court, well, that was the end of that. And the guy who was involved said basically he hadn't thought that the guy was going to send him down the river. He's a solicitor, that's what they do.
Yeah. Well, this is exactly what happened down in London. They didn't have a chance to create their own legal team. A guy came in called Scrapper Duncan, and he got one of the country's top QCs to do a pro bono case, and the whole legal team was sorted. Nobody had any choice on it. These were people coming in to a leaderless movement and self-appointing themselves in these positions of leadership and then controlling the movement from within.
Easy how to take over, isn't it?
Pardon?
Easy how to take over.
Well, this is it. You set up the model of what it is, and it was a brilliant idea. You know what I mean? Oh, let's get all the rebels together because they're not filling out their census. And the thing was, people were not filling out their census en masse now, so they've got to trick them into other ways. Like, well, there's so many rebellious people out there. Hey, George Soros, will you put £6 million into advertising so we can advertise a rebellious movement to find out who these rebels are? Why, sure. So the next thing we know, we've got a movement called the Occupy movement in I don't know how many cities in the world, but the most corrupted one that I know about was the London one. And I couldn't leave there and let them carry on their merry way corrupting people. I felt like the need to be there to expose it for what it was. And I learned a lot about law from being attacked by these people like Scrapper Duncan. Scrapper Duncan sat there every single day on he's got a blog called Scrapper Duncan. If you just put in Google Scrapper Duncan blog, you'll find his blog. And he had a very unhealthy obsession with blogging about me every day. But this guy has got like multiple years of legal training. So I was learning from him. You know what I mean? You might be sitting there and attacking me all day, but all I have to do is sit there and read through all your stuff and take out what I need. And thank you very much, Scrapper Duncan. I've used your public education and your legal training for my own gain. Thank you. I walked out of that case with case dismissed.
That's it. Why they think they're trying to be clever and screw us over, they're actually educating us every single time, and they don't see it. This is why they're becoming more and more cautious and not wanting to. In fact, some of them aren't even wanting to go on anything that's related to anyone that's awake.
Well, this is the whole thing. They may as well give up because the people are en masse waking up. And I still get people that are very, very close to me saying that you're not going to make any change, you're not going to make any difference. That's not going to make me go back in the system. I've had troubles within my own emotions. What I do does not serve me very well at all. You know what I mean? I could be 1 minute in a £4.5 million mansion and the next minute sleeping in a tent on the middle of a protest on a road. Yeah. So I don't know whether I'm coming or going after times. So this lifestyle does not serve me too well. I'm trying to do what I can for the betterment of humanity, is the way I see it.
This is where most of them fall down, because they work for money. I mean, any of us that still trade in the money situation only do it because it's all we know at the moment, and to get certain things paid at the moment, that's what we have to do. But it's not going to be for much longer. It's becoming so obvious that there's well, the power companies again are on about putting fuel prices up. This is after they got caught fixing the rate. Oh, what happened to that? Nothing. The banks and LIBOR, what happened to that? An inquiry. Whatever time, whenever they get caught out, they just have an inquiry. Whereas if it was me nicking off you, then I end up in prison. Sadly, there's two rules, one for them and one for us. And the rule for them say, you get caught out, we have an inquiry. Whereas if they get caught out, they get to prison.
I'd just like to let you know, Ceylon, that apparently we have just made #1 show on Caster FM tonight.
Cool.
So that's not bad standings at all. Now we've got about 15 minutes left, Ceylon. Can you run us over the solutions and the remedy, i.e. the 3-letter process, and how simple that is, and what? Because it's only in them 3 letters you've got a very simple process. Hit it from the top.
Well, yeah, basically letter 1, we say we totally accept that you're claiming that I owe you X, Y, Z, and I accept that on proof that you can actually provide proof, evidence that you actually lent me anything. So for if it was a bank, show me the accounting where you actually created the money that you lent. And
show me the actual accounting.
Yes.
And this doesn't mean your bank statement where they've obviously shown you, let's say, £10,000.
Yeah. Well, a statement's a statement. You know, don't forget, Dom, you owe me 50 quid. That's a statement. Does it mean you owe me 50 quid? It means I just made a statement saying you owe me 50 quid. But for me to enforce that, I would have to say, yeah, you know, remember we was at such and such and you were a bit peed, and so I lent you 50 quid, and you go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, right, here you go. Whereas that's all we're doing to the banks, and of course they'll go, well, look, we put this into your account. Well, yeah, I can see that something appeared in the account, but where did that money come from? It's the bank's money. But wait a minute, the banks can't lend their own money. Oh, it's depositors' money. Oh, wait a minute, you're not allowed to lend depositors' money. So where does the money come from? That's all we're asking. And because they can't supply the answer, or they'll send out some rubbish trying to confuse you, we give them 10 days to act on letter 1. And here's where it catches the new out. They'll send letter 1 off, and then 4 or 5 days in, they'll get a letter saying, blah, 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 American statutes, not English, blah, 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 all sorts of rubbish, and they get confused. It's just a standard bull crap response.
Yeah.
If there's one thing you should know when you get to get out of debt, when you start the process, when you send letter 1, you print off letter 2 and letter 3 at the same time, and then they're ready to go.
Because is letter 3, let me get this right, is letter 3 the estoppel?
No. Letter 3 is the fee schedule. Because we're not as bad as them, we'll send them saying, you say I owe this, provide me evidence within 10 days, or obviously I don't. And then 10 days later, we send them another letter saying, hey, just in case you forgot or it got lost in the post, we said we'll pay this if you can prove that you actually owe it. Again, I'm going to give you 10 days. So that's 20 days they've had now to prove that they owe a debt they claim that you owe. So after 20 days, they've not replied, or they've replied. It doesn't matter what the reply. The reply will be a standard send you around the trees, confuse you reply. So 10 days later, send letter 3. Letter 3 is the fee schedule. Right, you've not supplied me with any evidence at all that I actually owe you anything. So I'm going to apply this fee schedule, which I warned you about all the way along, that if you contact me, it's going to cost you this. If you send me any letters, it's going to cost you this. If you reply to me from now on, as we're now in agreement, because the 3 letters set up a tacit agreement, by their not replying to what you've asked for. And I'll just explain that a little bit more. You're sending them letters saying, supply me with evidence and I'll pay it. And they'll send you a letter saying, blah, 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 Consumer Credit Act 74, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. They never supply you with what you asked for. So you treat any response as a non-response. This is why I say you print all 3 letters off on the same day.
But
So
what do you mean by a non-response? Because, like, if you don't respond at all, wouldn't that be seen as an acquiescence?
exactly. But if they have replied to you but haven't answered what you asked, then that's no response. It's an acquiescence. They've not replied. You asked me, what was the Man U Chelsea score? And I say 1-1, when in actual fact it was 3-1. Well, you're taking what I say to be truth. Well, I never said I was going to say the truth. I just said here's a reply. That's all they do. They'll try a reply filled with a load of rubbish to confuse you. This is why I say print letter 1, 2, and 3 the same day, but with 10 days apart on the dating. And then every 10 days you send the letters off to them. It doesn't matter what they send you back. They will not give you what you've asked for. And by you then going, oh, well, they said this, should I reply to it? No. I've just told you they're going to send you a load of rubbish and then try and confuse you and get you to think, okay, I'll reply to this, I'll add this to the letter. No. If they've not given you what you asked for, is the sky on a clear day blue? What is your response?
Define blue.
A lighter shade of aqua or sea.
In the true essence, in fact, the sky is definitely not blue, in my opinion. That is my belief.
So therefore, you would say, no, it's not blue.
Yeah.
And that's your opinion.
So, to wrap it up on these letters, you're basically staying in honour in the law, and you're saying to them that you're willing to pay back anything that you lawfully owe.
Yeah.
And this is upon a condition, so you're asking for a conditional acceptance.
Yes.
Just please prove to me that I do owe you this money so we can both stand in honour.
Yeah.
So could you show me a contract binding both parties? And well, there isn't a signature from both parties on there, is there?
Well, occasionally they will add one, and some have even noticed they've added it and dated it 2 or 3 days later, which is total fraud in the first place. And the fact that it gives the big giveaway is at the top. It says agreement. Now they use the agreement, but they like to call it a contract. If it says agreement at the top and they say this is a contract, they're lying.
Yeah, because they need you to agree before it's an agreement, and then it becomes a contract. Is that right?
Well, a contract, they have to tell you all the terms and conditions. So they would have to say, when you sign this agreement, what actually happens is you create the £10,000, then we pretend to lend it you, and then we get you to pay it back plus interest. Now, if they said that to you, you'd probably go, so I'm creating this £10,000. You're tricking me into thinking you've lent it me, and then you want me to pay it back plus interest. No, how about this? I've just created £10,000. I will give you £100 for monetarising it. Now, that's a much better deal. There you go. That's a contract.
Yeah. And then on the second point, you're asking them to show you the actual accounting.
Yeah.
And they'll never do that because they might show you your bank statement, but that's not the accounting. And what you mean by the actual accounting is, how is this money created from my signature?
Yeah.
And then on the last point, you're saying, or show us an affidavit sworn under full commercial liability that I do owe you this money. And then when it goes to court, because there is a statement of truth saying, yeah, you owe us this money, which they'll never send you an affidavit saying that, because you would be able to prove in court that you create the money. This whole terms and conditions is fraudulent. So with their standing and their fraudulent claims and sworn under full commercial liability, you might end up owning the bank.
Exactly. This is why they never reply. They will never give you what you ask for. But what you have to ask yourself is, why wouldn't they do that if they're not breaking the law? Why wouldn't they just supply? I mean, an affidavit is just, an affidavit. I swear that I'm telling the truth, and if I'm wrong, You can come after me for everything I've got. Now, if you're telling the truth, that's nothing, is it? You wouldn't be scared of saying, yeah, I'm telling you the truth.
We do have a question come in from Spiky Man again. He seems to have a lot of questions, which he must be a great bloke, because I think everyone should question. But he's saying, has anyone ever had luck taking the debt collection agencies to court regarding the fee schedule? Now, with myself, the only time that I've ever used fees was for a thing that they used to do on the job centre called New Deal. And if you've been unemployed for a certain amount of time and claiming job seekers allowance, then what they'll do is they'll ask you to go on this New Deal, which is basically you've got to go and look for work and things like that. Now, I was already playing about with the system at this time, and when they asked me to go in for an interview on this New Deal thing, they sent me the paperwork and they said, could you have a look at this? I've been told not to argue the law with you, Mr. Lohan. And I've picked it up, and it was the statutory instrument regarding New Deal. And it was it's something like the Flexible New Deal Miscellaneous Provisions Order of 1997. So I sat down and I said, is this mandatory that I have to go on this New Deal? And he said, well, yeah, I'm afraid it is. And I said, well, now anything could be signed under duress. You've just threatened me. And he was like, oh, I didn't want to get into a law argument with you. And I was like, all right, fair enough. But like, if it's mandatory, then again, where do I sign up for this thing? Because I was looking through it, and the way my brain works on these legal paperworks, you pick things up pretty damn quickly. And I said to him, happy days, where do I sign up for this? And he looked at me strange and he said, well, what they'll do is they'll contact you by phone and want you to come in for an interview. And I said, write on the system right now that I will deal with this in writing and writing alone. So they typed that into my little box, and I went on my merry way. A couple of days later, I got a phone call from these New Deal guys, and I said to them, it does say on the system that I will deal with this in writing and writing alone, and any other phone calls will be seen as harassment. Thank you for your time. Goodbye. And I knew they would send me a letter out at this point, so I went straight down the job centre and I said, could you please help me put this letter into my documents and everything to do with my job seekers claim, because they're asking me to go on New Deal. And I simply stated, it's my understanding that the Flexible New Deal Miscellaneous Provisions Order is in fact an order, and anybody in law that makes an order is liable for a bill.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to accept your offer of your order upon my fee of £1,000 a day. Now, my mates that worked at the job centre that were studying commercial redemption and things like that at the time were saying, you'll never get the £1,000 a day. And I said, I know that, but they'll never ask me to go on New Deal. But do you know of anyone yourself that has actually got, because I don't, not in this country anyway, but anybody that has claimed any fees back under their fee schedule? Because I think it's beyond a joke myself.
Some have said they had in the forum, but that's their word against it. So whether they have or not, I don't know. I'm not really in it for making money. I'm in it because I want the system to end, because, you know, while you're chasing that pound or whatever, you're lining yourself up to be a slave, which is exactly what they want. So those that want to go and try and get it, yeah, that's fine. No problem. I've got 163 million owing from Nottingham City Council, and I'm just, you know, letting that trickle away until I figure out what I'm going to do with it. But I'm not in it for the money. I'm just in it for them to leave me alone. If they piss me off enough, then I will take it the full hog. And who knows, maybe I will be the first to take one of these to court and win, because I don't do losing.
Right, you've got 60 seconds left, Salon. Would you like to plug getoutofdebtfree.org any more than I have? And any last words?
Just go on it, read Getting Started, and once you get rid of the fear, that's all they control you by, fear, you will realise that there's so much more than you ever thought possible.
Well, that's about it for tonight. And Salon, thank you ever so much for coming in, and I'm so glad that you did, because John dropped out and that would have been a complete disaster if he just fell out and then there was just me by myself. But it was great to have the pair of you on, and after the hour we're going to have the Dark City crew on, and there's many strange conversations always goes in and out of the crew talk. So I'm going to hand it all over to the Dark City crew, and I'd like to say thank you very much for everyone that's listened tonight, and keep doing what you love and love what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks Dom, thanks Sound, absolutely brilliant stuff. Stay tuned if you want, guys. You're welcome to stay on through to the Dark City Dark City show coming up soon. A little bit of Zach and What Army